CWD Music Reviews here. I am CWD and this is going to be a music review of the new The Body album, No One Deserves Happiness. The Body are a Portland, Oregon experimental metal and rock duo consisting of drummer Lee Buford and singer-songwriter guitarist Chip Lee. For about a decade now, they've kind of polarized both the music community and the metal community for not only with this really noisy, abrasive, intense riffage and frightening atmosphere, but also incorporating elements outside of metal music in particular. Lee Buford's drumming incorporates lots of elements of doom metal and industrial, especially in the timbres on tracks on this album and numerous albums before. And Chip Lee's guitar seems to incorporate a lot of noise and sludge. Chip is also known for his own distinct vocal style where it's really high-pitched, frightening, and hellish. He goes higher than me somehow. I first caught on to these guys when I heard their Hacks and Cloak produced album, I Shall Die Here. It was certainly a good album, and it's definitely worth checking out a few times. But I can't say I return to it as often, and not because of the frightening atmosphere, but because I think the Hacks and Cloak kinda overshadows what it is the band themselves are doing, but that's not saying a lot since the band itself is particularly ominous and loud on this album. That being said, I was definitely intrigued with what The Body were gonna do. I was impressed with their performance on The Full of Hell and The Body album. One Day You Will Ache Like I Ache, which I reviewed on the channel. I saw no reason to try to give this album in particular a try, since it did come out a week before The Body and Full of Hell dropped their full-length album. And what I got wasn't just this frightening and dense execution in metal music and experimental rock music. I got a lot more. An incorporation of more experimentation and wider production choices, as well as, consequentially, one of the most intricate and outright disturbing records in metal I'm probably going to listen to this year. This album as a whole kicks off its 48 minutes in length with the first of 10 tracks, Wanderings. It's kind of worn off of me in terms of enjoyability, but it's by no means a bad track, or even less than a really good track. You get this mantra being sung by Miss Chrissy Wolpert. Oh, yeah. Alone, with like this really sinister and electronic beat hammers going on that really add tension, especially when her vocals get multi-tracked and more layers are being added on. Eventually the track just outright explodes with this sludgy and noisy riffage with this incorporation of Lee's drumming. The one thing I noticed about this track and numerous tracks here like Two Snakes and Adamah are this marriage of the synthetic and the organic, which is becoming quite a theme in modern metal music. Alter Plague's pretty much experimented with IDM on their last release, but I think the big example for me in terms of organic and synthetic fusion was when Liturgy dropped the artwork last year. Even if you hate the album or like the album, you gotta appreciate that there is metal out there that's effectively putting together these two different musical worlds, and that's exactly what The Body are doing here. An example of this would be Shelter's Illusory, which has like this implementation of, once again, some electronic drum timbres, probably 808s, as well as this combination of Lee's own drumming that certainly has a lot of oomph and viscera amongst it as it gets primal on this track. This track actually features vocals from Miss Marley Armstrong, who has another appearance on Adamah. But yeah, this was certainly an interesting track with this fusion of like grooves and beats from more so in the realm of pop music coming together with this twisted metal type sound that really rules. Get the track For You, which gets even more primal and chaotic, as there's this big old wall of noise that is further exemplified by Lee's drumming that gets more primal over time. It's just a moment of just outright chaos that I enjoy a lot, especially when it gets to the instrumental break, where the lead guitar just gets all over the place. That it's hard to deny that this stirred emotion within me. Then we get the track Hallow and Hallow, which is probably my favorite track on the entire album. We get essentially this like doom metal type riffage that really builds particularly well and really shows quite a bit of progression amongst the instrumental, especially when horns are thrown into the mix that really add a lot of density to this overall track. The second half is probably my favorite half on this track. It's really emotional and really just outright soul-crushing, and more vocals just come into the mix. I especially love Chip's vocals, even though he's not really doing anything different from all the other tracks where he has his usual vocal delivery. It certainly exemplifies the overall vibe of this instrumental, something just outright depressive and disturbing. The track Two Snakes once again incorporates 808s in it. There's like this really tortured riffage that comes up on the track. I think it and Chrissy's vocals, who once again pops up on this track, perform particularly well, certainly. The beat on this track is once again electronic. It's borderline industrial as it's coupled with this non-electronic sound. The same can be said about Adamah, which actually features Marley on this track instead of Chrissy. Marley is really singing her ass off on this track. Like, her vocal performance is probably one of the more passionate vocal performances on this entire album. Then we get the track Starving Deserter, which I thought was going to be my least favorite track on the album at first, seeing as it's more so a standard doom metal track and something that probably would have ended up on I Shall Die Here. But then I realized how well this instrumental builds and how well it progresses over time. Can't say I'm a big fan of like the noise outro on this track as well as the Fall in the Guild. Not that I'm against a noise outro, I just think that the noise outros go a bit too long for their own good. Like, they could have been shortened out a little. The Fall in the Guild is actually encapsulated in noise as it's really guided by this really dark and eerie piano with Chrissy once again popping up singing on this track. It's a dark track. Chrissy actually makes me wish that Chelsea Wolfe was able to hop on to this album and really do most of these vocal performances. Not that Chrissy does a bad job. I think she does an exemplary job on this album. It's just kind of a fantasy idea, I guess. Then we get the track Prescience, which, like Starving Deserter, probably would have been a least favorite track for me, given like how standard it is for like a post-rockish and doom metal-ish type song. But the little bits that really come through to me when I listen to the track enhance what the track is doing. Chrissy doing this spoken word piece about this offspring who has a mother that's really submissive and caring, but a father that has a violent nature about him. And eventually, this convergence of both natures into this one child eventually just outright destroys him. Kind of reminds me of some like T.S. Eliot shit. So yeah, this track really builds well, and then it looked like it was going to end with another noise outro, but it turns out that was just a break before the instrumental picks back up and it really goes for an explosive finish. And the closing track, the Myth Arc, which is so well done that I don't really have any complaints about it, as well as many tracks here. This is what I can pretty much describe as a sludge ballad. There's these resonating, abrasive drum patterns that are loops that seem to go with this atmosphere really well, as it's coupled with some drone metal riffage that is then juxtaposed by Chrissy's vocals that come in, and she sounds very somber and introspective. I will say that my one complaint is that I wish that Chip was on this track, delivering his iconic vocal delivery and pretty much having, I guess, the last word before it just glides out into this really emotionally heavy end to the album, but still, this was certainly a solid closer. So all in all, I love the hell out of this album. Really surprising. I didn't expect the body to come through with an album that's this great, especially since they seem to have focused quite a bit of interest and creative energy into the body and the full Hell album that I reviewed. There's not a single complaint about any of these tracks, like, as a whole, aside from, like, minuscule details here and there. I gave the body another shot at winning me over as a fan, and they did. And it's not that the body strayed away, they completely changed their sound, but they took the sound that they knew that worked, this disturbing and frightening type of compositions, and took in a lot of production cues, took in a lot of different elements of electronic music as well as symphonic music, and made something pretty much indescribable. They have pretty much made something that can only be described as something that just outright crushes the human spirit as a whole. Something that doesn't surrender its off-kilter energy and musical prowess and ideas in order to make something that's particularly accessible and really good. I'm definitely going to be looking forward to whatever it is the body is going to do next, as well as give their back catalog a bit more of a chance. This album is a plus 2.6 out of plus 3. If you're into experimental stuff, metal, experimental rock, certainly, then do definitely check this out. It's a fantastic album from this Portland duo. But have you given this album a listen? What'd you think of it? Did you like this album? Did you dislike this album? What was your reason for that, and what should I consider listening to and reviewing next? This is CWD Music Reviews here, signing off.